Hello. Today General Hospital will reveal exciting news on Thursday, June 12, 2025. First, the courtroom was filled with a palpable tension as the trial between Michael and Willow unfolded. The atmosphere was heavy, and every word spoken seemed to send a ripple through the room. Willow, her heart racing and her mind swirling with doubts, took a deep breath and decided it was time to confront Michael. With a sharpness in her voice, she asked him directly why she had traveled all the way to Germany to visit him, only to discuss matters concerning Wiley and Amelia. She had expected transparency, but what she received instead was silence and avoidance. Her eyes bore into Michael as she awaited an explanation, desperate for the truth. Michael shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his jaw tightening as the weight of her question landed heavily on him. He hesitated, then spoke, his voice steady but betraying the anxiety within him. He denied receiving any information about Willow's visit to Germany. His response, though calm, only added to the tension in the room. Willow's mind raced, unable to reconcile the contradiction between what she knew to be true and Michael's words. She felt a sharp pang of betrayal as the pieces of the puzzle refused to fit. Why was he lying to her? And if he wasn't lying, then why hadn't she been informed of any developments regarding their children? However, it wasn't just the conversation with Michael that caused the tension to escalate. Across the room, Drew's reaction was impossible to ignore. He shifted uncomfortably, his face betraying a sense of unease that hadn't been present before. His eyes flickered nervously, and his body language gave away his inner turmoil. Michael, ever perceptive, immediately recognized the signs. Drew's behavior was a clear indication that something wasn't right, that there was more to this situation than anyone was letting on. The air in the courtroom seemed to crackle with the unspoken realization that Drew was hiding something crucial. Michael's mind began to race. He could feel the pieces of the puzzle slowly coming together. Drew's behavior wasn't coincidental, it was a deliberate attempt to cover up something dark and dangerous. Michael's instincts screamed at him that Drew had been manipulating the situation for his own benefit. But what was the extent of Drew's involvement in this web of lies? Michael's grip on the armrest tightened as the realization sank in, he couldn't allow Drew to continue deceiving them. His determination grew stronger by the second. This was no longer just about the children or the custody battle. It was about exposing the truth and taking down the person who had been orchestrating everything from the shadows. With his resolve hardening, Michael made a silent vow to himself. He would uncover Drew's secrets, no matter the cost. The trial was no longer just a battle for custody, it had become a personal war, a war to protect his family and reveal the man who had been pulling the strings behind the scenes. Michael knew that Drew's facade was crumbling, and it was only a matter of time before the truth would come to light. He would not rest until Drew was exposed for the manipulator he truly was. Second, Ava extended an invitation to Cody, asking him to attend her lavish art exhibition, a glamorous event that promised an evening of elegance and intrigue. The gallery was filled with the hum of expensive conversations, the sound of champagne glasses clinking, and the gleam of finely crafted art pieces that seemed to capture the essence of the wealth and power Ava had managed to amass. But it wasn't just the high society allure that caught Cody's attention. It was the subtle yet undeniable tension in the air, a feeling that something more was lurking beneath the surface. Ava's charm was undeniable, but Cody couldn't shake the feeling that there was something off about how easily she had gained such a fortune, especially considering the financial crisis she had been rumored to be in. Trina, who had been standing beside Cody, couldn't help but voice her disbelief. She, too, had noticed the stark contrast between Ava's extravagant lifestyle and the economic struggles she was supposedly facing. How could someone on the brink of financial ruin manage to throw such an opulent event, with every detail meticulously curated, from the rare paintings to the expensive hors d'oeuvres? Trina's suspicion was palpable, her brow furrowing as she turned to Cody. She had always been skeptical of people who seemed to have too much too easily, and Ava's sudden success didn't sit right with her. Trina confided in Cody, sharing her doubts and urging him to look deeper into Ava's actions. There was something more to this picture, something that didn't add up, and Trina was determined to find out what it was. Cody, who had been listening intently to Trina, was more than willing to take on the task of uncovering the truth about Ava. The intrigue had grown within him, and he felt a certain obligation to fulfill his promise to Christian, who had been pressuring him for information and leverage on Ava. Christian's intentions were clear. He was after something bigger, something that involved a large sum of money, and Cody was determined to play his part. But beneath the surface of his resolve to get the money, there was a part of him that was genuinely curious about Ava. Her ability to manipulate the situation so effortlessly, her charm, and her secrets all made her an enigma he wanted to unravel. As the evening unfolded, Cody found himself drawn deeper into Ava's web. He knew that he had to tread carefully, not only because of his promise to Christian but also because of the growing connection he felt with Ava. Her allure was difficult to resist, and Cody began to weave a delicate dance of flirting and probing, hoping to find the right moment to expose her true nature. Every word he said, every look he gave, was calculated, but there was an underlying tension. He wasn't sure how long he could keep up the pretense, especially when every part of him was starting to question whether he was becoming just another pawn in Ava's game. Cody's determination was unwavering, though. He knew that the stakes were high, both for himself and for those who had placed their trust in him. As the night wore on and the art exhibition continued to dazzle, Cody's mind was firmly set on one goal. To uncover the truth about Ava and bring to light the dark secrets she was hiding, no matter what it cost him. Third, Alexis swallowed hard, her throat dry with fear. Her heart raced as she could hear the faint sound of footsteps approaching. She knew who it was before she even turned around, Ava. The sharp click of her heels echoed through the hallway, signaling her arrival, and Alexis felt a chill run down her spine. Ava's smile was as cold as ever, but behind it lay a threat that Alexis could not ignore. Ava had come to see her with one purpose in mind, to extort her. The weight of Ava's words crushed Alexis as she realized the gravity of the situation. She had no money left to offer, no resources to satisfy Ava's insatiable greed. Alexis was backed into a corner, and she knew that there was nothing she could do to escape the web Ava was tightening around her. But the danger didn't end there. The tension only escalated as Alexis became aware of the dark shadows looming over her life. Laura, with her sharp intuition, was starting to piece together the puzzle. She was growing suspicious of the inheritance that Ace had left behind, and Alexis knew all too well that the trail would eventually lead back to her. The huge sum of money that had mysteriously vanished was now under scrutiny, and Alexis was the one who had taken it. Every secret she had worked so hard to bury now threatened to resurface, and with it came the terrifying possibility of ruin. If the truth came out, Alexis knew she would be facing more than just public disgrace, she would be headed straight for prison. The walls were closing in, and the weight of her actions was becoming unbearable. She could hear the faint whispers in her mind, reminding her that the consequences of her greed would soon come crashing down. But it wasn't just Alexis who was in danger. Christian, too, was walking a fine line. His involvement in the accident that had been carefully orchestrated to harm Ava and Rick had left him exposed. The plan had seemed foolproof at the time, but now, with every move Alexis made, the risks grew higher. If anyone found out about Christian's role in the crash, it would not only destroy his reputation, but it could also land him in serious legal trouble. Alexis's mind raced with the thought of everything she had to lose. The tangled web of deceit and betrayal she had spun was beginning to unravel, and she had no way of stopping it. Every decision she had made, every lie she had told, was catching up with her. Ava's threats were only the tip of the iceberg. If Laura discovered the truth, if anyone learned about the stolen inheritance, Alexis would be finished. And as for Christian, his fate was tied to hers. The danger was no longer abstract. It was a looming reality that would destroy everything in its path. Fourth, Rick's face tightened as the weight of Molly's pointed questions bore down on him. Her words were sharp, cutting through his carefully constructed defenses. There was no escaping the truth now. Molly, with her piercing gaze, had cornered him in a way he hadn't anticipated. She wanted to know everything, the connection between him and Ava, the accident, and the tangled mess of lies that had ensnared their lives. With a deep breath, Rick finally relented. The words felt like bricks, each one heavy with guilt as they left his lips. He admitted to everything, the orchestrated accident, his involvement with Ava, and how they had been working together to extort Alexis for money. The revelation hit Molly like a freight train. Her blood ran cold as the truth unfurled before her. She had always suspected that something was off with her father, but hearing him admit to it in such stark terms was a betrayal too deep to ignore. She had trusted him, once. But now, hearing him confess to using his own ex-wife as a pawn in a sickening game of extortion, her anger exploded. How could her father, a man she had once looked up to, sink so low? The anger boiled inside her, but it was mixed with a deep sense of disappointment. She had never imagined that Rick, the man who had raised her, could be involved in such a vile scheme. Molly's thoughts turned to Ava, the woman who had been pulling the strings behind the scenes. She knew, without a doubt, that Ava was the mastermind behind everything. It had been her from the start, manipulating Rick, using him as a tool to get what she wanted. Ava had always been a danger, a toxic presence in their lives, but now it was clear that she was the real villain in this story. Molly's eyes burned with fury as she realized the depth of the manipulation, how Ava had orchestrated the entire situation to her advantage. Ava had played them all, turning their lives into a game of deceit, and now it was time for her to pay the price. Molly's mind raced with thoughts of revenge. She couldn't let this go, not when everything she had known had been shattered by her own father's betrayal. She had been forced to watch as her family crumbled under the weight of Ava's manipulation, and now she would be the one to make sure Ava paid. The fire inside her ignited a cold resolve. Ava had used them all, Rick, Alexis, even her. But now, the tables would turn. Molly wasn't going to let Ava walk away from this unscathed. The thought of seeing Ava face the consequences of her actions brought a sense of satisfaction to Molly, even as she felt the sting of the betrayal that had been dealt to her. With her resolve hardening, Molly knew what she had to do. She would take matters into her own hands. There was no room for forgiveness in this situation, not when the ones she loved had been so ruthlessly manipulated. Ava would pay for what she had done, and Molly would be the one to make sure of it. Finally, Elizabeth moved quietly around the room, her steps soft as she checked on Sasha and made sure everything was in place. The room was bathed in a soft glow from the overhead lights, casting a serene and calm atmosphere over the scene. Sasha, looking both exhausted and elated, cradled her newborn daughter, Daisy, in her arms. The little girl was peacefully asleep, her tiny chest rising and falling with each gentle breath. Sasha's face was illuminated with a sense of pure happiness as she gazed at the child she had brought into the world. It was a moment of calm after the storm of labor, a moment that felt timeless and perfect in its simplicity. Elizabeth couldn't help but smile as she watched Sasha, the new mother's joy radiating across the room. The woman who had been through so much in the past months, emotionally and physically, was now holding the greatest gift she could have ever received. Elizabeth could see the profound bond already forming between Sasha and Daisy. It was a bond that went beyond words, one that transcended any hardships Sasha had faced. She was finally here, with her daughter in her arms, and nothing else in the world seemed to matter in that moment. "Congratulations, Sasha," Elizabeth said softly, her voice warm and filled with genuine happiness. "Daisy is absolutely beautiful. You've brought a little miracle into the world." Sasha looked up at Elizabeth, her eyes filled with tears, but her smile was wide and bright. She nodded, her heart swelling with love for the tiny life she held in her arms. For all the struggles, the heartache, and the sacrifices, this moment made it all worthwhile. Daisy was her light, her little miracle, and Sasha knew that nothing would ever compare to the overwhelming feeling of holding her daughter for the first time. "Thank you, Elizabeth," Sasha replied, her voice thick with emotion. I never imagined I could feel this much love for someone so small. She's perfect. Sasha kissed Daisy's forehead gently, her fingers brushing through the baby's soft hair. Every inch of her daughter felt like a miracle, and Sasha could barely believe she was finally here. This was the moment Sasha had dreamed of for so long, the moment she became a mother, the moment everything changed. She had been through so much in her life, but this was the moment that would define her. Elizabeth stood beside the bed for a few moments, taking in the scene before her. She could see the joy in Sasha's eyes, but also the vulnerability. Becoming a mother was both beautiful and terrifying, and Elizabeth understood that Sasha was about to face a new world of challenges. But in this moment, there was no rush. It was all about bonding with her daughter, adjusting to the quiet peace of motherhood. "Take it all in," Elizabeth said gently. "You deserve this, Sasha. Take all the time you need to bond with her. This is your time." Sasha nodded, her eyes never leaving Daisy's sweet face. "I will," she whispered, her voice soft and tender. "I've waited for this moment for so long. I just want to hold her forever." Elizabeth smiled at the sight, her heart warmed by Sasha's devotion. As a nurse, Elizabeth had seen many new mothers, but there was something undeniably special about the bond between Sasha and Daisy. It was clear that this was not just a mother and her child, it was a promise of love, of a new beginning, of hope. As the minutes passed, Elizabeth continued to check in on Sasha's recovery, but she allowed the mother and daughter to have their quiet time together. There was no need to rush anything. Sasha's world had changed, and she was embracing it fully. As Elizabeth quietly slipped out of the room to give them some privacy, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride for Sasha. She had come so far, and now, with Daisy in her arms, she was ready for whatever the future held. For now, though, all that mattered was the love and joy filling the room. And for Sasha, there was no greater gift than that.